It's Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Granthermes. Today on the show, a definitely not safe for work episode because the House Oversight Committee got its first set of documents of the Epstein files. And the first one they got was the book of birthday messages to Epstein for his 50th birthday, which includes that birthday card and drawing with Donald Trump's signature on it. I'm also going to talk about what the White House and Republicans are saying about this latest release and why it looks like this Epstein story is probably going to impact the next things that Trump is going to do. But first, make sure you're following or subscribe to the show in whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you're a watcher on YouTube. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got brand new articles going up each week. It's just $5 a month for that. And as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims Newspod. That's MIMS Newspod, all one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on Twitter and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. All right, let's get to the show. Today's episode is sponsored by Ground News. You know, I try really hard to make it make sense, give you a complete picture of the biggest stories of the week, but I'm only one guy. And staying up to date with the events around the world can be difficult, even for me, where it's impossible to consult a single news source for the full story. And with our social media algorithms sending us the versions of the news that reinforce our own biases, it can be hard to know if you're actually getting informed or just seeing the news you want. That's why I've been using Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world all in one place, so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. My favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum or the other, so I can make sure that I know how the news is being covered. It's like Make It Make Sense for Make It Make Sense. And right now, if you subscribe through my link in the show notes, you'll get 40% off the Vantage subscription package. It's the 1-year package that I use for unlimited access to every feature. It's just $60 for the entire year or just $5 a month. Your subscription not only helps Make It Make Sense, but also it helps Ground News make our media landscape more transparent. Again, use the link in the show notes for 40% off their unlimited Vantage subscription. All right, let's get to the show. So on Monday this week, the House Oversight Committee got its first bits of evidence from the more than 300,000 pieces of evidence in the Epstein files. And just in case you don't remember, because it was a month ago, which feels like a year ago, just before the House was sent home for its summer recess to avoid the Epstein story, the House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena the Epstein files to get to the bottom of what the DOJ actually had. And while last week the Republicans on the Oversight Committee tried to release 34,000 pages of the DOJ's case against Epstein, it was really only a way to try to make it look like the whole Epstein conspiracy and Trump was overblown and that the story was dead. A lot of those files were redacted so much that they were just worthless to read, and a lot of the stuff you could read, well, that was stuff we already knew. And it didn't work because this week, House Democrats on the Oversight Committee started to release page after page from this book of birthday messages to Jeffrey Epstein, including the birthday message from Donald Trump that he wrote to Epstein that had a weird fictional back and forth between Trump and Epstein, talking to one another, saying they had, quote, certain things in common, that they were enigmas. And it ended with Trump telling Jeffrey Epstein, "May every day be another wonderful secret." It was written inside the armless, legless, headless body of a woman with the only discernible features being two small curved lines for breasts and Trump's signature where her pubic hair would be. And we'll come back to that signature in just a little bit here. Because also in the pages of this book is another image of Epstein and another man who was a longtime member at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club holding a check for $22,500 with a message below it saying it's of Epstein selling a, quote, fully depreciated girl to Donald Trump. Another message is written from an alleged 22-year-old waitress thanking Epstein for introducing her to a number of famous people, including Trump, former President Bill Clinton, and Prince Andrew, alongside a photo presumably of Epstein with his hand down the back of this woman's pants as they're walking. It's hard to know because their heads are cut off. There's another image that appears to show a hand-drawn image of Epstein grooming young girls at a birthday party in 1983 next to another drawing of, I think, those same girls surrounding Epstein on his island in 2003, one of them absolutely performing some sort of sex act on him. And then another entire section of this book is just called Children, with photos of very young girls in suggestive poses, and I am not going to be posting either of those things on YouTube here because they are disgusting. But now that you know what is in this book, at least what we've seen of it so far, let's go back to what the White House and Republicans are doing and saying about this, because up until now, Trump and the White House have called the entire Epstein story, most recently, a Democratic hoax. Of course, after spending years promising to release the files and saying it was Democrats who were implicated in all of this because they were part of some sort of pedophilic cabal. Now, Trump sued the Wall Street Journal for first reporting what was in that birthday card, even though they didn't show it, saying it was a fabrication. He called Epstein's victims hoaxes and then questioned why people cared about them, especially now. J.D. Vance called the birthday message when it was reported by the Journal complete and utter bullshit. Just last week, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said that actually Trump was an FBI informant before being forced to walk that back. Now, to be clear, Trump did initially answer questions at the beginning of the Epstein investigation around 2008 after he and Epstein had their falling out. But according to the attorney for the victims, Trump did an about-face shortly after that and has refused to work with the investigation since. Now today, when Trump was asked by NBC News about the drawing that was released by House Oversight Committee Democrats, he called the entire story a, quote, dead issue, saying, quote, I don't comment on something that's a dead issue. I gave all the comments to the staff. It's a dead issue. It's a change in tone for Trump, given that his lawsuit is still ongoing, so it's not a dead issue to him when it comes to what's going on in court. And in July, when the Wall Street Journal story came out, he said this.
I never went to the island.
Do you maintain you did not write a letter for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday?
I don't even know what they're talking about. Now, somebody could have written a letter and used my name, but that's happened a lot.
So, was that a lie then? And if it wasn't, why wouldn't he say the same thing now? But also, Republicans are coming to Trump's defense here, saying the signature on that birthday card and thus the entire message itself are fake. Here's Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett saying just that.
I mean, anybody can do a signature. We've seen the auto pen's been used quite a bit with the Biden administration. So I've never known Trump to be much of an artist either. So I kind of draw that into question.
There's a history of him drawing
stuff. The thing is, it's been there for 4 years, and now it's just come out. I just don't buy it.
So you think really someone might have just forged this somehow and sent this to the Epstein?
Somehow. It's so easy to do.
And then during the White House press briefing today, we got this from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, about the birthday card.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
About the Epstein case, would the White House support a professional handwriting expert review of the document released yesterday to prove that it's not the president's signature?
Sure, we would support that. And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature. And we have maintained that position all along. The president did not write this letter. He did not sign this letter. And that's why the president's external legal team is aggressively pursuing litigation against the Wall Street Journal, and they will continue to. Christian.
Thanks, Caroline. Following up.
Okay, let's talk about this. The Daily Signal is owned by the Heritage Foundation, and it's run by the Heritage Foundation, the ultra-conservative, far-right-wing think tank that was responsible for Project 2025. Second, it also seems like the press secretary got her source wrong because she's actually quoting a story from the Daily Wire. This analysis that Leavitt is talking about here was actually done by 3 large language model AI programs, not expert analysis, but ChatGPT. So for her to say that people have said that this thing can't be real just isn't true. And we also know that because the New York Times just today did a side-by-side look at Trump's signature over the past 30 or so years, showing, frankly, how remarkable it is that it has changed so little. It's an iconic signature. We have seen it all over the place. But even that feels like going a step further than we have to. It's not unthinkable to believe that Trump would have sent his friend of 2 decades a birthday message, the contents of which are somehow relatively tame compared to the rest of this birthday book that Epstein's estate has turned over to Congress. We know Trump and Epstein spent a lot of time together, including alone at Mar-a-Lago. And if this were a forgery done by the Democrats, why not make it more damning? And why include things about other prominent Democrats in this birthday book at all? It simply does not make sense. There are more steps that you have to take to believe that this thing is a fake than not. But it's what people like Levitt and Representative Burchett are asking the American people to do, to make a choice between believing Donald Trump or their lying eyes. But that does get us to what happens next here, because there are a few things that should be kept in mind as this story continues to play out. First, there's still a petition to get a vote on the release of the Epstein files to all of Congress that I talked about last week. That's the one supported by the survivors, their families, and has a bipartisan backing, including from some very pro-Trump Republicans. That seemed like last week it didn't have the support to pass after the White House started calling GOP members individually, telling them it was a hostile act to the president to sign this petition. But with this new birthday card out, the Trump stuff aside, even if they don't believe that, the other things in it are so damning and so disgusting that the question of just how complicit some members of Congress will want to seem to their voters in not releasing these things is going to get asked. Second, Trump is battling some really bad numbers lately. New polling from CBS YouGov shows that his overall approval rating is 44%, marking 6 straight months in which he has been under 50% support. So underwater in support is how you'll hear that called. The jobs number from last week was the lowest they'd been in months. The number of available jobs was lower than the number of people looking for work right now for the first time since 2021. And if the government doesn't come to an agreement soon, it'll shut down in 3 weeks, although that is for a different episode. Now, finally, Trump is ramping up immigration enforcement in cities across the country. He started staging ICE agents around Chicago and Boston this week, putting so-called sanctuary cities on notice. Sanctuary cities is the name for cities that have chosen not to help federal agencies in enforcing certain immigration policies without obstructing those agencies. Now, Trump even suggested he may go into states with Republican governors to send troops to cities run by Democrats like New Orleans. And with this new development in the Epstein story, I think it's worth watching to see if the tactics in those cities gets more outlandish and more violent. We've already seen ICE agents posting up at elementary schools. The man who was in charge of ICE raids in Los Angeles earlier this year was just sent to Chicago after the Supreme Court just ruled that racial profiling for ICE is legal. That was an opinion released by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court on Friday. I also think that it's important not to fall into the trap of calling any of this a distraction from something else, because they're not. We can and should care about multiple things at once. Is the Epstein book and that story important? Yes, because the White House and the president aren't making any sense when it comes to Trump's relationship with Epstein as more evidence comes to light. And we need to ask ourselves what kind of cover-up this administration and administrations of the past may have been involved in. Are the economic numbers bad? Yes. And it's important for us to pay attention to those and call on elected leaders to do everything they can to stop us from sliding into a full-blown recession. Is it important to stay focused on the rights of people where immigration operations are taking place? Yes, because we know the White House is going to ramp up those operations and has already been caught violating civil rights. But none of those things are a distraction from the other, and we can't let them be talked about in that way because, unfortunately, all of it has to matter all at once. All right, that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube if you're a watcher there. Leave a comment below as well. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got a brand new article coming out tomorrow. It is just $5 a month to get access to that and all this great bonus content I've got up there. And as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on Twitter and Bluesky, and at Grant Herms TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Herms, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.